But now I'd like to welcome you all here to the A Park Underground. This is the first event of this kind that we're having here in quite a while. I've never really been a part of such an event, so we hope to have more. And right now I'd like to welcome Mr. Pat Mooney, who's a friend of mine from many years ago and was kind enough to come up here from Virginia to kind of share with us what's been going on in his life and what he's been working on. So would you guys give a warm welcome to Mr. Pat Mooney.
Good evening, thank you. I just want to give you a quick breakdown before I go into the prepared remarks that I have, just to what you can expect mentally tonight, this evening. Most of you, if you're already familiar with my work, you know that I'm going to push some reality envelopes. I'm going to challenge some ideas that you may hold or may have held, and so keep that in mind. Just realize that what I'm saying here is my perspective, and it's a perspective that I find great joy in living from, and the only reason I take the time to share it tonight is that I hope that there may be something in here that you might take from it that would give you the kind of joy that I have in my life. Part of that joy is manifested in this audience. I have some great friends and great support, and I really do appreciate seeing a lot of faces, old and new. So I'm going to go through my prepared remarks, and at the end I tried to budget some times for Q&A. So unlike in regular high school, when some of you had me as a teacher, you were dying to get out of the classroom and didn't ask any questions at the end of my lecture. If you do have some questions, feel free to store them in the back of your mind and save them for at the end of the presentation, and I'd be happy to answer them then. Okay? And then otherwise, if you look at the front of the podium, there's a saying from the British Underground that says, "Mind the gap." That's their way of saying, watch your step. Okay, and so basically that's what I would say too. Mind the gap. I'm going to be showing you a reality that may be very different than your own. So there's a gap there. And if you're not careful, you may fall into the cracks between your reality and mine. And that might be a totally different lecture for another evening. But feel free to keep your perspective if you'd like. I don't expect any of you to take anything that I'm saying as gospel truth. The only thing I expect is your kind attention, your great support, and let's have a good time this evening and hopefully a few laughs. Okay, with that, I'm going to get going here. First, I'd like to begin with a moment of gratitude. I want to thank all of you for being here with me this evening and giving me your support. I thank those who are not here physically, but are supporting this evening with their thoughts of love. I thank you in advance for your rapt attention, your curious questions, and your open minds. I thank my higher self for giving me the courage to speak my truth, and I ask for the grace to do that tonight in the most beneficial way possible. Finally, I am grateful for the opportunity to participate in this collective chance of greater expression and growth. May what occurs here tonight serve some good in all our lives. So be it. With that being said, happy Friday. I would like to extend to you a happy Friday, whose name is derived from the Norse goddess Freyja. Freyja, more popularly known as Venus. May what we experience here tonight be truly beautiful. I would also like to wish you a happy new year. We are in the first few days, for those of you who don't know, of the latest turn in the great Mayan cycle known as the Hunab Ku. Hunab Ku is their word for the source from which all things emanate. And we are in the latest turn in that stage of their calendar, which, if you're aware of the Mayan calendar, has a fateful close somewhere near the end of 2012. Those of you who are not familiar with the Mayan calendar, I highly encourage you to take a look and investigate it for yourself. It's one of the truly most inspiring and creative forms of art and ways of looking at time that I have ever come across. Basically, their principle is based on a different timing frequency than the Western world. The Western world, particularly those that have been heavily influenced by the Catholic Christian tradition, follow what's known as the 1260 timing frequency, which really predates Christianity and goes all the way back to Babylon. And the Mayans, in their philosophy, they assert that 1260 timing frequency, 12 months, 60 seconds, based on the circle, is that it leaves us with a two-dimensional view of reality. Because if you look at our clock, the clocks are two-dimensional, and we sort of lose something about who we are because of that two-dimensionality, whereas the Mayans base their timing frequency on what's known as a 13-moon, 28-day calendar, and they have a 1320 timing frequency. And if you investigate that, you will see lots of really beautiful and creative symmetry. And their whole thing is that if we were to just think about time differently, the way we would relate to each other would also change. As a matter of fact, time reform was a big event in the League of Nations agenda in the after World War I as a possible solution for stopping the consciousness of war on this planet. And ultimately, the Vatican put the kibitz on it because they felt it was a threat to the kind of control of thought that they were presently enjoying at the top of the Western elite power structure. So that was put on the back burner, and we've never really gotten around to it since. But it may be one of the things I just say investigate and see what you like from it. But we'll talk about where we are. If you see there, these are all the measurements. You can see a kind of symmetry. The calendar begins in the year 3113 BC, and it ends in 2012 AD. Now, a lot of people think 2012 is the end of the world. It may be the end of the world, but the end of the world is not necessarily the physical destruction of the world, just like when you read the tarot card, the 13 card is the death card. The death card, if you ever pull that up in a reading, doesn't mean that you are going to die or that someone you know is going to die. It means a belief or a part of yourself is going to die. And in all of that, there's also the opportunity for resurrection. So it seems that as the consciousness of our planet accelerates because of the speed of information translating on the internet, as our awareness grows, the potential for transformation also accelerates, as well as the potential for collapse. And if you have a mind frame that's embracing that, the chances of you navigating these stormy waters may be better than those who have no idea of what's coming at all. So that's all that their message is to prepare you for that. The pagan gods still mark our time. I begin tonight's discussion with the mention of Norse myth and Mayan cosmology because the point of view they are some of the most magical influences on cultures throughout our history. Despite living in a culture where most people are influenced by biblical monotheism, the pantheistic pantheon of the ancient gods still marks the passage of our days. The sun is now the chief deity in our consciousness, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but it had not always been. There were several times where the moons were known as the chief gods that were worshipped, and there were other times where the stars had cults of worship equally as strong as the sun worship we practice today. But those of you who heard me go happy Monday, happy Tuesday, happy Wednesday, happy Thursday, happy Friday, all through your high school curriculum, you now understand that there's a different component and a different level to why I like that. I like the fact that these pagan gods are still alive somewhere in our consciousness. This is another example from the Mayan culture that I find particularly mind-blowing. This is a sarcophagus lid. It weighs several tons from the tomb of a Mayan king found in Chiapas, Mexico, what is today Chiapas, Mexico, and his name was Pakal Votan. He was a Mayan king who lived from 603 to 683 CE, or AD, whatever you prefer. His tomb was dedicated and sealed 9 years after his death, in the year 692 CE. And if you look at that tomb lid, Pakal Votan is in a very, very interesting burial position. He was actually found in that position, in that tomb. So much so to the amazement of Russian scientists discovering this tomb that they called him the astronaut. And if you look, he appears to be sitting on some sort of technological device. Appears to be like he's looking into some sort of gauge, possibly a rocket ship or a observing kind of instrument. Certainly something that those of you who've been indoctrinated into the Western system of history does not seem possible based on that worldview. The tomb was discovered on June 15th, 1952. And just as a kind of lead-in to where we're going tonight, the things that make you go, there are 1,260 years between 692 and 1952, which marks the 1260 timing frequency I just spoke about before. And there are 1,320 years between 692 and 2012, the 1320 timing frequency. Pakal Votan, his greatest teaching to his people, and they believed that he was not necessarily born of earth like several amazing teachers in earth history, said, all is number, God is number, God is in all. So we start to peek at a reality that for most people, you just didn't cover it in your regular K through 12 education. Okay, and so these led me to ask some pretty interesting questions, such as the big questions we all do from time to time. Who are we? Why are we here? And what the fuck is going on? These are the things that we all wonder from time to time, and they puzzled me. As a former history and religion teacher at a Catholic high school in New Jersey, and 1 year stint in New York, these were the questions I was paid to relate the answers for. These questions are still the expression of the passion that guides my life today. There are many things on this beautiful planet that can hold our attention for a lifetime or several, but for me, these are the questions of my destiny. I don't know how long I have been following them. I am only glad that I am. Tonight I will speak to you about magic. Get up there. The power of manifestation and the income tax. The first two are usually partnered up in any discussion about the esoteric or hidden knowledge of our existence. I include the income tax only because it will provide an excellent example of magic in action and serve as a vital and viable exercise in human empowerment. More on that later. Am I trustworthy? I teased you a little bit before with the mention of my background, and I suppose that this is as good a time as any to delve into that more clearly. After all, why should you trust me? What experience have I accumulated that might be of benefit to you on your path? What are my motivations for doing any of this? So what you have there is a little picture from me. It was kindergarten, and that's kind of like my view of the world sometimes. I was trying to be the Hulk. The Hulk was my hero at the time, so I was making that face for the camera. But I surrounded that picture with some other influences that, for any of you who delve in the esoteric arts, they may make some sense to you and give you a kind of grasp of where I'm coming from. I'm an Aries, okay, so I do like to challenge people. I like to butt heads. I like a good mental joust from time to time. I am a rat. My brothers, one of who's here in the front row, when I was a young child, they used to call me Fat Pat the Water Rat, even though I was a skinny kid, very, very skinny kid. You could see it, count every rib in my body. But they called me Fat Pat the Water Rat anyway, and it was only many years later that I found out that in Chinese astrology, not only did I fall under the sign of the rat, but that I was indeed a water rat, because they also match the elements, earth, air, fire, and water, to their astrological signs. So it's one of those interesting things where you look at life and you're saying, some people intuitively know things better than others. Right there, right there. Thank you. Yeah, okay. Welcome, welcome. Okay, the last sign on the lower right-hand side is the Fool in the tarot deck. That's there's soul signs, there's personality signs. There's a personality sign, I'm an emperor. I like to have my kingdom ordered, and I like to know where things go. But my soul card is the Fool. I'm the guy that happily wanders into new things, and sometimes at my own peril. The fool is a person who often walks into danger but doesn't understand the danger. And I guess that's somewhat describes how I wandered into this whole field of study that I'm going to speak to you about tonight. And the final one on the top is white spectral mirror. That's once again a reference from the Mayan time cosmology, and that was the symbol of they call it the star seed of the day that I was born. And under my picture is the poem that came with that particular day. And I feel like it does suit me very well. It says, I polarize in order to reflect. In other words, I'm going to push you to your outer limits in order to see what's out there. I'm stabilizing order. That's that emperor part of me. I do like to make sense of some of the things that bounce back. I seal the matrix of endlessness with the lunar tone of challenge. Okay, so some of the ideas here tonight are going to be challenging. And ultimately, I'm guided by the power of heart. Okay, I think ultimately anybody that's known me, not that I need that personal validation anymore, but I think anybody that's known me has always known that I've come from whatever I've done, whether it's aggressive or passive or funny or serious, I've come from it with a true state of play and a true state of passion for what we do in our life. That's one of the other reasons why I would always say Happy Monday, Happy Tuesday, et cetera, and so forth, is because I don't know how many days I have to be in this body. I enjoy being in this body, but this may be my last one. If it is, why not be a happy one? And that's my philosophy. So that's a little bit about who I am. Of course, that could be a whole jargon of bullshit, and you'll never really know where I'm coming from. And that's an important point too, and we'll kind of address that in a second. I want to be up front and say right now that I don't expect your trust, nor do I seek it out. Neither do I crave your approval or appreciation. I'm here because I have a song to sing, and I like singing it, or based on a thing I heard before, I'm just a monkey making noise to other monkeys. And you'll go out and make monkey noises and talk about which monkey noises you liked better. I found that an interesting thought. My self-worth or definition of success is not tied to how many people believe in me or like what I'm saying. One makes the decision to have this perspective when one is committed to the truth of knowing who he or she really is. So do your best to listen to your own heart as we go through this material. Trust that above all else. It's important to remember that being committed to the truth doesn't mean one is always right. In fact, it means willing to admit you are wrong when the circumstances show it. It means unlearning. Here's what I have defined unlearning to mean. Those of you who haven't been to my website yet, it's the Institute of Unlearning, which is found at www.unlearning.org. And this is what I define that to mean. It's the process that allows evolution to occur naturally by removing mental obstructions that no longer serve human nature. One becomes an unlearner when one seriously decides to figure out why such a beautiful planet as Earth is filled with seemingly endless wars and conditions of suffering. To the unlearner, the idea that life is about mere survival is unacceptable. By discovering your own abundant nature, you seek to create and share in a world where the only limits are your imagination and not the external authoritarian power structures and their subversive methods of manipulation. So my story about who I am has to do with the lies that I once believed in and how they changed my life once they were seen as lies. And that's the trick to all of this, seeing that what you sincerely believe to be the truth is actually a thought form causing you great harm. Furthermore, you realize that these harmful thoughts can be traced to a small class of individuals in the world who are benefiting immensely from them at your expense. Once you recognize these thought forms, 3 major life choices become obvious to you. The first is that you become frightened and decide not to question your thoughts anymore. You do what you are told. This comprises a large majority of the Earth's population. And unfortunately, this stance, this choice is driven into our heads long before we become the age of adults. We're just told, don't ask those questions, there's no answer, that's just the way it is, who do you think you are? These are the things that are built into our brains, and unfortunately most of us accept these things because we realize people don't yell at us as much when we do this choice. Here's the second choice. Your second choice is that you see these thought forms, you see how these thought forms control the lives of many people, and you decide to learn to manipulate these thought forms to your advantage too. This is the somewhat awake but complicit crowd, usually in the middle tiers of the controlling societal power structures. I say somewhat awake because the fear still motivates their decisions, which is symptomatic to me of an as yet unblossomed spiritual understanding. And the third choice, notice the Illuminati guy has a black eye. You find your courage after moving through the stages of fear, anger, rejection, depression, confusion, and self-doubt. From this point on, your goal is to increase personal power and help those who desire to do the same. Because you are growing in power, you represent a loss of power to the current system, which it will try to prevent to some degree. Some of you will face these choices tonight after hearing all that I have to say. These three choices came crashing into my life one startling evening in November 2001. Up until that point, I would have described myself as a fiscally conservative Republican with a socially liberal outlook and a Catholic-based spirituality that was not confined by my religion's dogma. In other words, I believed in a financially responsible government that did not get in the way of other people living their lives as they saw fit, because I believed in a God of unconditional love whose radical philosophy was still not embraced by the world 2,000 years after he preached it, especially by those of his own religion. But the irony of the teaching profession, which I now consider to be a true counterintelligence agency, which I had been doing for 8 years since I graduated from college, is that they say that what you teach is what you need to learn most. This was certainly true in my case, as my ideas of religion and history were about to be ripped from me. In that one fateful evening, I totally dropped my faith in Jesus Christ as my God and the United States of America as the world's hero. It's hard to say what caused me to ask the questions that led me to these startling information, which I will soon share with you. I can wax philosophically and say that it was my time, my destiny, my karma, my need for self-actualization. But I don't want to speculate on those unless you and I are having a few beers or doing some other drugs, and we're talking in some soul-searching retreat together as we search for life's meaning. Or you can ask during the Q&A later if you prefer. Like many people in this area, the events of September 11th, 2001 sent me into a soul-searching quest to understand why some cultures of the world hated us to the extent that so many civilians would become sacrificial targets. I needed these answers not only for myself, but for my students. They were looking for me to make sense of the world for them, and I wanted to give them the best possible answer I could. Those answers were not found in the textbooks, and they wouldn't be asked on the SAT exams, nor could they be found by researching mainstream news archives. What I discovered through months of intensive research was that if you follow the money in this world, you begin to find the strands of a web of power so secret, so well hidden from normal view, that most people wouldn't believe it if you tell them about it. This is because most people have accepted the fear-based conditioning of their childhoods and usually respond to big questions with the A response that I mentioned earlier. This web of power crosses all political ideologies, all national borders, all religious belief systems, and all of our historical time periods. In those small, elite, dynastic circles of power, what I am describing is known as the grand work of the ages. We are close to the final stages of its completion, at least in this round. And if you take a look at this pyramid, you can see at the bottom, there's a bunch of things that do not seem connected at all. Banking, illegal drugs, and organized crime. Maybe they do seem connected nowadays, but for a lot of people, they don't draw the dots. But what the pyramid is meant to do is that if you follow the web up, where the news media doesn't go, what you find is that the same people, the same faces, the same families, the same money seems to be connected to all of these events. And as a high school teacher, we never really had the time to explore all these things because it's get through the chapter. You've got 45 chapters to cover this year in so many weeks. Run through it. This stuff takes time to digest, to see, to illustrate over and over and over again. And many people don't want to hear about it because the questions that this information will lead us to make a lot of people uncomfortable. Here's another of the diagrams. It's called the Core of Rape. The Masonic Brotherhood intelligence agency's compartmentalized power structure. The Freemasonic Secret Society intelligence agency's network is intrinsically interwoven into all levels of society's structure: social services and child care, police, military, politics, legal system, mass media, banking business, medical and pharmaceutical industry, alternative health care, education, religion, food, multinationals, illegal drug running and distribution, and organized crime. The hierarchy of this compartmentalized power structure are the secret services, the major think tanks, and the manipulators of our society. These are the people who run our society and our lives. Okay, and you can see somewhere, one of the chief mechanisms that this is accomplished is through secret societies. If you've never heard of the term Freemason, your education in the world is sorely lacking. The Freemasons are a secret organization, the largest fraternal order in the world, and some of you may know Freemasons personally because they are so pervasive. Not every Freemason you ever meet is in on the deal, okay? One of the ways that these things work is that organizations, particularly the popular organizations, are where they act as a front, sort of like when the mafia wants to launder money. They don't do it in broad daylight. They set up a coffee shop or a dance studio, and then they launder money through the back. And then the feds know what to look for, and they go ahead and they find these things and they bust these things from time to time when it's convenient for them. It's the same thing with politics. It's the same thing with all the crimes that we find in the world, is that a lot of them are run through very, what we would say, beneficial organizations. The Freemasonic Secret Society donates $3 million a day to charity. That's a lot of money, and a lot of people would say, well, hey, these guys can't be all that bad. And it has nothing to do with the people themselves being bad. What I'm talking about here is that there's a system that very, very smart people took a lot of time to set up, and it's very easy to take advantage and create decisions that will never get covered in the news networks that are supposedly dedicated to keeping you informed. Why is that? Because many people in the news networks are part of this secret structure as well. And like I said, there's not all of them are like given a secret handshake, secret code word. A lot of them don't even know that they're a part of it, just like a lot of us, like myself. I didn't know that I was part of the structure. I was being a teacher, paid to teach the accepted mainstream view of the world. So ultimately, when I woke up, I realized I was part of the structure. What was I supposed to do? You had that choice. If you look at this, it's kind of the same diagram from a different angle. Society kind of perceives this problem, if you could imagine the pyramid three-dimensionally, but imagine that the world is looking at it from the bottom. Not the side, but from the bottom. If you were to look at a pyramid from the bottom, you'd just see a flat surface, the foundation upon which the building rests. So it looks flat, there's nothing there. You see the surface, you see it all. But what goes behind that surface, what goes behind the scenes, that's where the real action is. And obviously, because we're talking about control and we're talking about secrets, The less people that know, the better, which is why the pyramid power structure suits this kind of manipulation so well. That's the other thing here. It's that both the good guys and the bad guys in the world ultimately work for the same people. Arrgh, I be the terrorist that hates America and our freedom. Surrender your liberty. And at the same time, we sick the police on them. And I'm the security force that will invade your privacy to protect you. Surrender your liberty. In the end, we have a world where everyone has surrendered their liberty for whatever reason or another, whether it's good or bad. And this is what's known as, in some circles, as problem, reaction, solution. In other words, there's a problem that's created and the people react. Stop this from happening. Somebody help me. And then the solution is offered, but the solution is offered by the same person that caused the problem. And we're constantly being played back and forth like this over and over and over again, and it's the way that the agenda of manipulation and control is slowly advanced. It's not advanced rapidly. This is, like I said, the grand work of the ages. It's been going on for centuries, if not longer. And this is the typical disempowered human reaction. We pretend not to see what's going on, and we cry just to make it stop. I don't care what you have to do. I don't care what you have to do. Just don't tell me about it. Get rid of the problem. That's a popular reaction, and it's the prime reaction that the powers that be are ultimately trying to milk from you and I. Is this some grand conspiracy theory? Well, let's examine these two words and begin to deprogram the normal negative reaction people have to this word combination. Theories are reasonable guesses as to why a thing works the way it does. What makes some theories better than others is the amount of data acquired to support the theory. This isn't always the truest measure of a theory, as one convincing error can cause the whole theory to come crashing down, even after years of acceptance. So theories, in and of themselves, aren't bad things. Science wouldn't be science without them. Well, what about conspiracy then? Do they exist? Well, they must, because we have a word for them. The simple definition of conspiracy simply means to breathe together. So all of you and I tonight, we are conspiring. Whether or not we'll get arrested for that is up to your own personal decision with what you do with what you hear tonight. But I think that we should concern ourselves with something a little more serious than that. Not all conspiracies are bad, such as when your loved ones conspire to throw you a surprise party on significant occasions, or people take up the anonymous collection to help another person out. Those are good conspiracies. We only concern ourselves with conspiracies when they seem to have the intention or the effect of doing harm. These kinds of conspiracies happen all the time. Every day, scores of people are charged by the police for conspiracy to distribute drugs, conspiracy to murder, conspiracy to harm children, to commit fraud, etc. These negative conspiracies, then, are clearly real. Why then do we not pay attention to them? Why do we let the mainstream media get away with shoving the public's concerns under the table? We've come to the point where as soon as we hear the word conspiracy theory, we have to disassociate with it in order to protect some veneer of credibility we think we have with others. A good response to this fear of conspiracy theories is to challenge the complainer by calling them a coincidence theorist. These are the people who think life happens just because life happens. Everything's an accident. You're an accident. You know, the fact that your whole life is an accident. This is the kind of thing that science is very good at inculcating into our consciousness. We're nothing but scattered atoms, and why it happened like that had to do with any myriad number of potential effects, and all of them just happened to come together to create you. Isn't that amazing? There's no order to any of this. It could all end in a heartbeat. Okay, while some of that is true, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to dismiss that there is an ordering principle behind our lives, behind all creation, and what that ordering principle is probably the greatest question of our lives. And I hope you are encouraged to ask that question. and discover that journey. But seriously, the government is promoting conspiracy theories all the time. It's not just maybe people like me or paranoid people. They want you to believe that 19 Arabs hijacked 4 airliners and used them as human missiles, which destroyed all the Twin Towers as part of the Pentagon, despite the fact that several of these suicide attackers are still alive. They want you to believe that Iraq sponsored this event in some way while engaging in a dire plan to launch weapons of mass destruction against us. Neither of these conspiracy theories have enough evidence to convict anyone in a court of law where the defendant would have a chance to refute the evidence and cross-examine witnesses. This is why the evidence of that fateful day from the largest crime scene in American history was so quickly destroyed and shipped off to India. So what have we here is really a question of whose theory you are choosing to believe in. It will come down to a matter of trust. Remember that. Come down to a matter of trust. We'll get into why this is such a critical question later in the presentation. In the meantime, it will be important for me to present some evidence for your consideration that backs my particular conspiracy theory. What you'll see here is a video I produced for my website, which brings a lot more knowledgeable and important people to testify on my behalf. Let's take a look. Welcome to another IOU video presentation. It's often difficult to help others see that the systems of power we have set up in the world only benefit a small elite of the human population. Too many of us are still controlled by powerful illusions like democracy, capitalism, and equal rights. While it may be easy for the delusional to label our kind as paranoid conspiracy wackos, it's often harder to label historical men, many of whom are our cherished icons, as such lunatics. In the spirit of this conclusion, please don't take my word that the powers that be are intent on treating you like cattle. Take it from much more important men, like these.
easily said. Don't try turning tables instead. You've taken lots of chances before, but I ain't gonna give any more. Don't ask me, that's how it goes, 'cause part of me knows what you're thinking. And don't say words you're gonna regret. Don't let the fire rush to your head. I've heard the accusations before, and I ain't gonna take any more. Believe me, the sun in your eyes made some of your lies worth believing. I am the eye in the sky, looking at you. I can read your mind. I am the maker of rules, dealing with fools. I can cheat you blind, and I don't need to see any more to know that I can read your mind. 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 Don't leave false illusion behind. Don't cry, I ain't changing my mind. So find another fool like before, 'cause I ain't gonna live anymore believing some of the lies, while all of the signs are deceiving. I am the eye in the sky, looking at you. I can read your mind. I am the maker of rules, dealing with fools. I can cheat you blind, and I don't need to see any more to know that I can read your mind. 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 I am the eye in the sky, looking at you. I can read your mind. I am the maker of rules, dealing with fools. I can cheat you blind, and I don't need to see any more to know that I can read your mind. I can read your mind. I can read your mind. I can read your mind.
I started the IOU because my answer is no to that question. Not only did these revelations affect my political understanding of the world, they tore my religious beliefs apart as well. If you follow the line of thinking illustrated in that short video back through the ages of history, you would also discover that these elites have been fabricating systems of religious belief too. It's safe to say that none of the world's famous religious icons, Muhammad, Jesus, King Solomon and David, Moses, Abraham, Buddha, or Krishna, ever existed as historical figures the way their sacred scriptures depict them. You are still in the safe range, were you to posit that none of them ever existed at all, though I personally don't go that far in a few cases. All of these deities that we worship are just astro-theological references to the sun. The Rosicrucian cross, this is a familiar esoteric symbol. Sometimes maybe you'll see it on the back of tarot cards or in certain halls like that. It's also known as the Golden Dawn cross, named after a secret order of magicians. As you can see, this is the Christian cross, the way that normal Christians would not necessarily perceive it. Lots of astrological symbols, geometrical shapes, Hebrew writing, astrological symbols. And what this diagram teaches members of those secret societies is that the crucifix is not a Christian symbol. It represents the sun. Notice the rays coming out behind it. Always has, always will. Its worship precedes Christianity by thousands of years and is a sacred symbol on all continents and in all cultures. This glyph shows that initiated members of the secret societies understood that it represents truth of an astro-theological nature. In other words, the sacred scriptures tell us more about the sun, the moon, and the stars and our connection to them rather than they do a specific life of a real or imagined deity. Any of the gods associated as the Son of God, and there are many, I've counted at least 16 in my research, who were born of a virgin, had 12 apostles, etc., and so forth, died for the sins of man and rose again, are almost certainly mythological creations meant to keep the uninitiated, you and I, in a state of ignorance and control. And if you look at the Middle East, you can see how that system of control plays itself out perfectly. Now you have to remember that I was a religion and history teacher in a Catholic high school and happily voted for George Bush in the 2000 election. That was me. The shock to my system on that November Eve was equivalent in spiritual terms to a severe heart attack. Over the course of the next few years, I literally lost all the hair off my head. Not out of stress, I purposely cut it. It was at this point that I immediately chose option C that we talked about before, and was thrown into a chaotic period of change that lasted a good 2 years. It took all my strength to finish out the school year so that I didn't abandon my students in a lurch. But I knew that day in November that my career as a professional school teacher was done, unless I wanted to slowly go crazy over time. It was time to leap into the unknown and learn more about the power of magic so that I could break the spell cast over my life and begin to teach others to do the same. Now that you have some background about where I'm coming from, we can get into the next part of the lecture, which is really the meat of the lecture, and this is talking about magic. I will need to set up a part of this by defining what I mean by the word magic. For most people, magic is defined as a powerful or mysterious effect in which the cause is highly difficult to ascertain. Whenever we don't understand something, we often attribute it to magic. We call smart people wizards, which is a class of magician, like special effects wizards. There is also the more unfavorable term witch, that is used to describe females who are experts at manipulating others to get what they want. In earlier centuries, witches and wizards were feared because of their power was not understood. Today, they are not so much feared as they are ignored because we think magic is for entertainment only. But I would like to offer a different definition of magic, one that I believe is more sophisticated and really gets to the heart of what I would like to focus on tonight. This definition comes from two modern magicians, years apart from one another, Aleister Crowley and Genesis P. Orridge. Crowley is definitely the more famous of the two, and not necessarily famous in a good way. Once again, that may have a part to do with the way that our society fears magic and the unknown. They would define magic this way: it's the science of making things happen to your making things happen according to your desires in order to maximize control over one's life and immediate environment to create a universe that is perfecting in its kindness toward you. I think that's an amazing definition of what magic is. If you look at the words that I've underlined, it's a science. In other words, there are things that can be known. You're not just making it up in your mind. You can perform experiments and see the results, and you can repeat those experiments. Those are the things that science uses to define what's true or not. According to your desires. Okay, desire is one of those touchy words, particularly in our culture that has a Christian biblical background to it, because desires are oftentimes associated with Satan and evil and selfishness. And whether or not those things are those things or not is going to be, once again, up to you and your own personal introspective experiences. And what I like is that it's perfecting in its kindness toward you. Okay, we're all looking for a kinder universe. It's probably the case for those bastards that are at the top of the pyramid power structure, too. They determine the world is kind for them if the rest of the world is suffering. That's the kind of kicks that they like to get. The universe is kind to them. Whether that's kind to us or not is a question that you and I will have to decide. But they use magic. I once read somewhere that the world is the way it is, or the world seems to be evil, because the evil people desire what they want more than good people. And why is that? Part of the times the good people are taught to run away from your desires. You look at the Buddhist teaching, what's the chief thing? Run away from your desires. Your desires enslave you. Your desires entrap you. They keep you here in the karmic cycle forever. Release your desires and be free. In the meantime, the person on top who has very strong desires runs around and sticks you into the case system where you're smelling cow crap for the next 700 lifetimes, while he's living in a big mansion, So once again, religion can certainly manipulate people to do things that, and the great thing about it is that they can get people to willingly accept the kind of conditions that we see so much on the planet. This definition brings us to the central question of my work with the Institute of Unlearning. Whose life are you living? You are sitting here tonight thinking that you are in control of your own life. Most of us like to think that we're in control. But are we really? Is it possible that we are living out our lives according to somebody else's desires and not our own? If you find out that other people's desires have been controlling you, do you have the power to break free of them? Do you have the courage to break free of them? What separates those of us who are magicians, and by the end of this night you will realize that you can all be magicians if you're not already one. What separates those of us who are magicians from those who are not is one thing and one thing only: knowledge. Once you figure out what a magician's trick is, they lose their ability to mesmerize you any longer. This is why the magicians surround their craft with such secrecy and showmanship at the same time. Busting their illusions is taking away their power and taking away their livelihood, which is why secret societies and secret services and national security laws and all of these things which hide what's going on behind the scenes, why these laws exist, because you have this show that this person's out caring for you, but behind the scenes all the deals are made. You don't get to see that. That's the same thing with the magician waving his hand and the bird pops out of here. In the meantime, there's a whole other trick that's going on, and he's getting you to believe that he's really powerful. These politicians are getting you to believe that they really care about you, and they really care about what's going on in the world when their agenda is totally different. Everybody look here, thanks to the news cameras all pointing this way, while something else very different is going on. Knowledge will end that. I want to give you a test right now. Yes, I'm still a teacher. I still like giving tests. If you're going to be able to see through the magical illusions I'm highlighting this evening, you must have powers of observation that are highly focused. I'm going to show you this very, very short video of some people bouncing basketballs. If you are able to count how many bounces occur over the course of this short video, you might just have what it takes to break a magician's spell. I've done this on a few occasions to crowds, and the chance of you getting it right the first time is about 30%. Remember, follow the bouncing ball, okay? That's all you got to do. Try and count how many times the ball is bounced. Don't be discouraged. Here we go. Anybody know how many bounces? 18. Okay. 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 How many people saw the gorilla? How many people didn't see a gorilla in that video? Okay, I'll show you again. Watch the gorilla. Here comes the gorilla. There it goes. That's the gorilla, okay? And when I saw this too, I was totally fooled. I'm like, I'm playing a second video. There's got to be a second video, one where the gorilla comes through. And it's the same video. I can show it to you after the presentation. The reason why I show that, it's an excellent demonstration of magic at work. Okay, I'm not wearing any fancy clothes. I'm not wearing any, no poofs of light. All I did was I got you, because you're with me, I got you to focus on a particular thing that I wanted you to focus on. I gave you the power of suggestion. And you all looked at that. And right in the middle walked this pretty interesting phenomenon. And if this is a funny thing, so we can debate and we can roll back the tape and we can say that, well, that was a great joke, joke's on us. But what happens when that stuff happens in real life? What happens when this force that gets us to look one way, you can see how something can happen right in front of you. Any police officer will tell you this. Go to any kind of crime scene where 20 witnesses are there, and they're not going to tell you the same story. I mean, you try and get a picture together that makes some sense, but most cops would rather have the smoking gun rather than just testimony alone going into a case. Okay, so this is one of the things that we have to watch when some of the big things happen to us. I thought that was a very powerful illustration of magic in action. Where you and I have failed in this life is in thinking that magicians only work at children's parties and Las Vegas casinos. Where you and I have failed in this life is thinking that magicians work their magic on external reality with lots of fancy hand gestures and quick flashes of light and fancy words. While these are parts of the magical process, what is really being worked on by the magician is the thing that we think is beyond the influence of others, our minds. Once you discover that you have been manipulated and that your perceptions are creating your reality, you come to realize that you have a choice in what you choose to perceive. In the very least, you have a choice in how to act. And the reason why I put Homer here is that the mind is not the brain, but it's kind of a good representation, very popular person. And a lot of us, it's not that our minds are small, our brains are small, but I think there's a little truth in some of this humor is that, we're kind of looked at. Anybody ever see the movie Defending Your Life? You ever get a chance to see that movie? It's about the afterlife. It's really funny. There's a joke in there about, humans being little brains, and that fear is the thing that keeps us on Earth, and that we only use 3 to 5% of our brains. And he says, well, what do the smart people do? He says, well, when you use more than 5% of your brain, you don't want to be on Earth. So I think that's kind of like Homer Simpson is certainly a guy that's in that 3 to 5% range. And, we laugh at him because we see a lot of ourselves in him too, I think. But here's some serious magic. Just like that little video we showed before, this is some of the serious magic that's been worked on our minds in the last little more than half a century. Pearl Harbor. Now that you just witnessed how easily it is to steer people's perception into that harmless magic trick, let's take a look here. We see that we are told that the attack on December 7th, 1941 was a surprise attack. Yet the evidence is clear from the historical record that President Roosevelt was warned of the dangers to the Pacific Fleet years before that day. We also know that he desperately wanted to be in the war despite campaigning on the peace platform in 1940. In 1932, Pearl Harbor was exposed in an Army-Navy defense drill. In 1938, Pearl Harbor was yet again exposed as an unsafe place to store the United States Navy, to dock the United States Navy in the Pacific. In 1940, Admiral Richardson refuses FDR's orders to station the fleet at Pearl Harbor. He's fired and replaced with Admiral Kimmel. Admiral Kimmel also says this is a very bad idea, but he doesn't protest and he carries out the orders anyway. The Japanese codes, we also know, were long broken before December 7th, 1941. As a matter of fact, we may have used the breaking of that code in our advantage to coordinate the attack that Roosevelt later on said was a complete surprise. The Kennedy assassination. We are told that a single man who was not a very good marksman at all performed one of the most highly skilled kills in history. Even though we have evidence of all kinds of suspicious activity staring us in the face, many of us have bought the official story of another crazy lone gunman. Yet when over 100 witnesses to the crime die in mysterious and convenient deaths before Jim Garrison can bring this case to trial, none of us scratch our heads and go, The Kennedy assassination is the king of all conspiracy theories. They're usually in the next room to the Elvis reunions. Whenever you go to these places, they bring fanatics in droves. We love to talk about it. We love to break it down. Will 9/11 become the same? That's my question. September 11th, 2001. We are told that 19 Arab hijackers performed complicated flight maneuvers with commercial airliners when many of them were terrible flight students on single-engine Cessna airplanes. Furthermore, we are told that 2 of these airliners were responsible for the unprecedented collapse of a structurally sound World Trade Center tower. Yet what was hidden from the public knowledge at this time? Perhaps a book written in 1997 called The Grand Chessboard, written by Zbigniew Brzezinski. In the video, I called Henry Kissinger a big-time motherfucker. Zbigniew Brzezinski is basically his partner in crime. He's the motherfucker in waiting when Kissinger dies. Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote a book, The Grand Chessboard, where he talked about that the United States, basically, if it was going to remain, he changed the word, he used the word geo-imperial strategy, okay? Now, if you listen to what we stand for as the United States, we're supposed to be a democracy where we believe in talking to people and making peace. Geo-imperial implies a world empire. And Zbigniew Brzezinski, who's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, all these secret societies that we talked about before, wrote a book called The Grand Chessboard, said, the only way America's going to fight a geo-imperial war is if we are attacked like a new Pearl Harbor. Funny that it just happened to have that way, and we just happened to go into the Middle East, the exact area he outlined in the book. 2000, the neocon project for the new American century reiterates the same scenario. And we also know now that America was warned several times and several months in advance. Yet President Bush and his crew was able to get away with the excuse, we never knew that anybody would ever use commercial airliners as human missiles. I mean, nobody thought about that. And I remember when I was still plugged into the mainstream that's what I thought. Whoever thought anybody would ever use an airliner as a human missile? Yet, when you do the homework, we realize not only did we uncover and stop a plot developing in the Philippines in 1994, where the exact same thing was underway, so this idea was being planned before. We also have proof that we were warned by the Mossad, which is Israeli intelligence. We were also warned by Russian intelligence. We were also warned by German intelligence. Everyone knew what was up. The mayor of San Francisco was given a phone call not to fly the day of 9/11, as well as several other things that make you go, All of that stuff swept under the carpet like a good magician's trick. One of the more amazing things is that American Defense Forces were wargaming terrorist plane hijackings on the same day as the attacks. The chance of that happening and being an accident are beyond chance in this universe anyway. So what I'm going to do here is begin to reverse the spell of some of these illusions in your mind, since 9/11 is still so prominently used as a spell of control, even though we know that Saddam Hussein was not responsible for it, even though that there's good chance that Osama bin Laden was not responsible for it. Since 9/11 is still so prominently used as a spell of control to usher in all the police state controls, I feel it's imperative to counter that spell whenever possible. This is one of my attempts. Welcome to another IOU video presentation. Filled with the horror and shock as the events of September 11th unfolded before our eyes, the Illuminati broadcast media moved quickly into their hard sell, creating conscious and subconscious associations of the images of that day with their pre-planned and pre-packaged war on terror. Sadly, most of the people in our country fell for it, even those who remain opposed to today's Iraq war. Only a very small minority has had the courage to admit that the attacks of those days were the result of an inside job orchestrated from the highest levels of the U.S. government with the aid of international intelligence agencies and state and local government officials. What you are about to see is the antidote that will help to cure your mind of the poisoned programming done that day and every day since. The lesson hinges on two very simple words: controlled demolition. Okay, what you're going to see here is an actual controlled demolition of an abandoned building. Nice and neat, straight down. Okay, let's see what the World Trade Center South Tower looked like. There it goes. Oh, that's a pretty nice and neat collapse there. Straight down. Nothing awkward about that. Looks like somebody planned that one. Let's see that controlled demolition again. This time abandoned building, different angle. Straight down. Nice and neat. Well-placed explosives. That's how they do it. That's a professional job. All right, let's see if the World Trade Center North Tower was any different. Oh, straight down. What do you know about that? Looks like someone planned that one too. I don't think a jet caused all that to happen. Here's that controlled demolition again. This time from the ground level. See that perspective. Yep, straight down. These guys are professionals. Let's see that World Trade Center South Tower from the ground level. Up, straight down. That looks so neat. What about World Trade Center Building 7? That didn't get hit by any plane. Oh, wow, straight down too. Wonder how that happened. Don't worry if your mind doesn't readily accept the fact that those buildings were detonated with well-placed explosive charges instead of collapsing as a result of burning jet fuel. It usually takes some time to reverse a well-orchestrated mindfuck. Feel free to watch the video over and over until the truth slowly starts to sink in. Once it does, you will have a whole new set of choices and beliefs to operate from, and then you can begin to plan your way out of this mess. If you refuse to be convinced that your government is lying to you after numerous exposures to this video, then please enjoy the following video segment. Take your usual dose of Prozac and repeat these words after me. Look at the pretty flowers. My government is honest and seeks to protect me. Bad people hate us because we love freedom. I believe what the news tells me to believe. I pay all the taxes everybody tells me to pay too. I am a coincidence theorist.
I can't wait to watch my favorite reality TV show. Jesus or aliens will soon save me in a great rapture.
When confronted with the reality that we have been duped, many of us go into shock because they feel powerless as to how to respond to such an overwhelming and absolute evil. Many will say that they will now no longer support such evil manipulations, so they decide to get involved by protesting or writing their congressman or trying to vote the offending political party out of office. While those intentions are good, the actions are meaningless. Waking up to one illusion doesn't guarantee that you'll wake up to them all. Equally powerful in the minds of the people are these illusions: that America is a free country. We often confuse physical mobility with personal volition. Citizens do not have access to meaningful information that would enable them to make other choices, potentially better choices in their lives. Governments and businesses extort money and property in enormous sums. Those of you who just heard about the Supreme Court ruling that said that basically the power of eminent domain has been expanded. A government can take your home no matter how long you've lived in it because it thinks it has a better use for it than you. Remember that this country was founded supposedly on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is an original derivation from life, liberty, and property. And property rights going out the window is seen as a bad omen anywhere where freedom is ultimately supposed to be expressed. Government and businesses extort that also with the income tax, which I'll be getting to in a moment. And the power structure is in place to quell popular dissent. The idea that America is the freest country on earth is a very powerful illusion. There are other powerful illusions that your vote matters. This is incorrect when you know that presidents are selected by their bloodline lineage. All of the presidents in this country have connection to European nobility. The idea that you and I can grow up to be president is a very powerful illusion. Appointed officials have more power than elected ones. The ones you vote for are not the ones who make decisions. The ones that do make the decisions stay in power long after your elected leaders are out of office. Financial costs of elections dictate a government by the wealthy. NGOs, which stand for non-governmental organizations, such as the Trilateral Commission, the Red Cross, a bunch of others, they script world events and political responses of each country. Secret societies ensure that the right people ascend to positions of power. This last election was the most egregious example of that. John Kerry and George Bush were both selected from an elite club known as the Skull and Bones Society, which at any time has only 800 living members. The odds of two people from such a small circle being the two choices for presidential candidate are once again beyond the illusions of chance in this universe. We might not all be operating in this universe. Political parties represent the people is another powerful illusion. I call them Democrooks and Republicans. Both parties are controlled by money that finance them. Both parties serve to channel public frustration through meaningless debate and ineffective action. Both parties convince you to be taxed more. Both parties engage in wasteful spending, not only wasteful spending, but wasteful borrowing too. Both parties are linked by secret societies and non-governmental organizations. Both parties exist to prevent meaningful opposition from rising. Why in the land of the free are we in a two-party system when so many people have clamored for a third party? Why can't all of these other candidates get a voice in the most important decisions of who we elect to president and other offices? Well, we love our two-party system. It's a tradition. It's the way we both feel. It's unique. Blah, blah, blah. Other powerful illusions are the media. The news media tries to present all the facts so citizens can make informed decisions. That's their job. That's a lie. The media, as this picture makes fun of, always ready with the news, with the new and better ways of seeing what's not in front of you, of not seeing what's in front of you. All major media companies are now owned by a small number of corporate conglomerates. I believe 6 companies own most of the major news networks in this country, and that includes all the local newspapers and television stations. All broadcast publications are given talking points that don't differ from one news outlet to the other. As an exercise, go home tonight, if you still have television, and turn on C-SPAN, Fox News, CNN, whatever, and you'll see that they're all talking about the same thing, yet they all are trying to be different from each other. We let you decide. We break the news first. News is presented at a reading level below 8th grade. Why is that? Because society best operates when people think at a level below 8th grade. Give me my Power Rangers and my toys and my glitzy candy. News is rarely covered with enough depth to answer or generate serious questions. Even when I believed in the mainstream version of reality, I was entirely frustrated that during the presidential debates or anything else, the news media never did an in-depth investigative reporting on any issue that mattered a damn to people. News is not objective, nor is it on the side of the people like it's supposed to be. Other media also create illusions to support the present power structure. Hollywood itself is a magical term. Hollywood was what was used in the staves of the ancient Druid magicians, Hollywood, and hence that name. Music, video games, etc., they all come together to create the reality that most of you and I have been operating in for most of our lives. When you decide it's your time to understand, when you decide that it is your time to understand, you will see that magicians in the highest levels of government, business, and finance have organized a system of power big enough to accommodate a lot of illusions. They are happy to do so as long as you supply them with one thing and one thing only: power. Power is the component that most humans are sorely lacking in their lives. This is not because there is a lack of power. I'm speaking to a room of tremendously powerful people, but only because their power is being used for purposes that work against them. You would not use your power to work against you unless you could be tricked into doing so. It's the old rhyme, the old deal with the devil, the old nursery rhymes, the old tricks. Those things are true. They tried to tell us, but we didn't listen. There's serious money magic going on. This is clearly illustrated by the illusion of the income tax. Most people think that magic has nothing to do with serious stuff like taxes. Yet magic is principally linked to taxes because it's associated with money. Money as it's used today is a unit of magical power. Money is created out of nothing and yet reaps its creators tremendous, tangible benefits. Money is created out of nothing, yet the majority of the world is enslaved to it. Taxes are the primary way in which this a primary way in which this creative magical power is used against people. And if you look at this symbol here, a lot of people don't even notice it because, once again, it passes our awareness every day. But what the hell is a little owl doing in the corner of our dollar bill? And if you look at the dollar bill, there's a whole lot of stuff like that. And it's not because the engraver was bored and decided he wanted to be cute and nobody would catch him. Okay? There's a purpose for everything that's happened on that dollar bill. The dollar bill is a tool of magic. Also, the dollar sign, traditionally, we usually see it today with one line with the S through it. But when it was originally created in a more formal it's 2 lines with the S through it. And that is a sigil. We'll talk about magical sigils later. And it's a sigil for Isis. Isis was the goddess of Egypt, who was the mother of Horus and the father of the father and husband of Ra. The mother and husband of Ra. And Isis is today known as the Virgin Mary. Credible magic. The income tax. Created with the Revenue Act of 1862. In history class, I and all my other colleagues taught you that the income tax was created with the 16th Amendment. That's because the history books told us that it was created with the 16th Amendment, and I had no reason to question that. until I started to question things. It was actually created in 1862 as a way for Lincoln to raise money to continue fighting the Civil War. It was modified several times over the course of its history, most notably in 1913 when the 16th Amendment was passed, 1923, 1928, 1939 on the eve of World War II, 1954 at the beginning of what we call the Cold War, and 1986 in the last stages of the Cold War. The Supreme Court continues to rule that the income tax, here's the key, as written, is entirely constitutional, and I agree with that. The Depression and World War II saw government expand enormously into private citizens' lives. These events created the psychological trauma and broke the will of resistance in most Americans' lives. Before the Great Depression, Americans prided themselves on rugged individualism. To take a handout from the government was the most insulting thing you could do for yourself and your family. People did in droves in the Great Depression only because the bankers drove the country to an exaggerated point of starvation. We've had depressions before hundreds of times, many times in this country's history. The Great Depression was the severe one because it was an agenda of implementing a new stage of control. And by making the Depression so severe, many Americans readily accepted the government aid. But when the government aid came in, you also had to fill out all these forms and accept certain levels of government involvement in your life, and the magic trick was woven. As applied, the income tax remains faithful to the letter of the law, but moves way beyond the scope of its power, breaking the spirit of the law. Laws are supposed to be for the benefit of people, not the minority in our society, and yet that's exactly what it is. So while it is entirely constitutional, spiritually and morally, what the income tax is a great crime. It's one of the greater crimes that allows all the other crimes to continue in this country. Magick is behind the income tax success. When you went to school, in grammar school, they taught you about this grammar term called homonyms. Homonyms are words that sound alike but are spelled differently. Here are a few examples. Bizarre, bizarre, sense, sense, sum, sum, sun, sun, gate, gate, wait, wait, die, die, Mooney, Mooney. Mooney, the religious cult, Mooney, me, okay? We may both be nuts. You'll have to decide. But there's another class of words that your teachers never taught you about. These are words that sound alike. Actually, they're not words, they're terms. These terms sound alike and are spelled alike, but have entirely different legal meanings. I call these legalisms. If you see these words on a legal document, like a Form W-2, like a Form W-4, like a 1040 tax return, and assume that they mean what you think it means in common English, you do so at your own risk, and you have been doing so at your own financial peril. Americans are fooled by legalisms into forking over trillions of dollars to which the government has no legal claim to. If you have a little more courage, this is the scary part here. If you have a little more courage, it won't be long until your power in the form of your own money that you make with your own life force will start flowing back to you. We looked at those terms that were on there before. I'm just going to quickly flash back to them. United States, state, employer, employee, wages, self-employed, trade or business, income. These are all words that we think have a certain meaning. Let's see what they actually mean in the law. Okay, and I'll point out where you can look these things up for yourself when you go home. I don't expect you to take my word for it. The United States. The term, notice I'm going to say term here because they can't say words. If it was words, you could look in Webster's to define it. If you go to Webster's and you look up United States, this necessarily won't be the definition that you see. When you say United States, you think you're talking about the 50 states, District of Columbia. Okay? The term in the law means the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Guam, and other federal possessions. It does not mean New Jersey. It does not mean Virginia. It does not mean any of the other states that you think you live in. State, we think New Jersey is the state, yet in the law, the term means the District of Columbia. So when they're talking about the state, they're talking about the District of Columbia. Why is that? We'll get into that at the end. And if we don't, please remind me to to get into that during the Q&A. Employer. The term means the person for whom an individual performs or performed any service of whatever nature as an employee. If you work for someone, you think you're an employee. Let's see what the law says an employee is. The term includes an officer, employee, or elected official of the United States. Remember what these definitions mean. United States, a state, or any political subdivision of the District of Columbia, or any agency or instrumentality of any one or more of the following. The term employee also includes an officer of a corporation. Now, do a quick mental check and see if any of you fit that definition. If you don't fit that definition, the income tax laws do not apply to you. Very good news, but very frightening news nonetheless, because people say, what do I do now? Wages. Your boss pays you wages, right? Think again. The term means all remuneration for services performed by an employee for his employer. Once again, wages are only something that an employee can receive. So you get your 1040 and it says, fill in this box, these are your wages. You know, it's the same thing as saying, look at this video, follow the bouncing ball. Yet the big frickin' gorilla is ripping your money off. Okay, that's what's going on. Self-employed. Well, you know, there's a definition for self-employed, those people who don't have employers. The gross income derived from an individual from any trade or business carried out by such an individual. So we have to look up trade and business. Now, here's an important thing. Why do most people not know this? Most people don't know this because the Internal Revenue Tax Code is over 3 million words long. How many of you have time to sift through 3 million words to see the entire context in which all these words should be represented? Most of us don't. There have been a few people, and I'll point them out to you, who have. And it's very important that we listen to some of the things that they said. But the main reason why we have is because in 1990, the Internal Tax Revenue Code went online. And for the first time, people could actually read the code, you know, and search it with databases and all those other things. Just like the printing press was revolutionary because it was the first time many people could read the Bible and say, hey, the Catholic Church isn't reading the Bible right. And all the Protestant revolution started. And so it's the same thing here, hopefully, with the income tax. Now that most of us can have access to it, we can say, hey, you know, I don't necessarily have to pay all that money that I've been paying all my life. Trade or business. Let's go to that trade or business. The term includes the performance of the functions of a public office. So if I'm self-employed, the only reason I have to pay income taxes is if I'm performing the function of a public office. And I would gather to venture that most self-employed people are not doing that. Income. The word income, we're talking about the income tax. You want to ask, what is income? The word income is never defined in the tax code. The Supreme Court says that it does not mean everything that comes in, yet the IRS and your accountant at H&R Block would love for you to think that income means everything that comes in, okay? And these are the magic tricks in which you and I are robbed to great expense. How you got suckered. You trusted the wrong people. It's not your fault. Most of us do. Most of the harm that's incorporated into our lives come from the people that love us, not because they hate us in any kind of way, but because they pass on not only their genetic bloodlines, but their ignorance too. You did what everyone else does or told you to do. You filled out forms W-2, W-9, and at some point in your life, simply because this is what you had to do when you started work. You fill it out, you don't make noise, and you get a paycheck, and somebody takes a bite, and that sucks, and that's life. The only thing we can be sure of is death and taxes, right? You signed off on forms 1040, which is even worse, and W-2 at 1099 year after year. So in other words, not only is your employer lying to you about what you're receiving, but you go and lie to the government yourself because you don't know you're lying. You submit your own testimony against you. All this evidence is being used by the feds against you, and the state is using it the same way. Now, there are a lot of people on the internet out there who have lots of theories about the income taxes, why you shouldn't have to pay it. And they're all crackpot theories. and I can speak from personal experience because I've explored a few of these theories and originally believed in them. Remember what I say about unlearned. Unlearned means you have to be willing to admit you're wrong, okay? And there have been a few of these that I thought were very good ideas, but if you continue on the truth quest, the truth continues to come and you have to drop what the evidence shows you is wrong. Here's one: the income tax didn't exist. There's a lot of people out there that say that it was never properly ratified before the 16th, or it was ruled unconstitutional, or those sort of things. So in other words, they say that the 16th Amendment was passed when most of the votes, most of the congressmen and senators had gone home, and therefore it was passed without the majority, but people believed in it anyway. And if you challenge it on that, you'll win. You'll lose and you'll go to jail. The 16th Amendment, properly ratified or not, has anything to do with the income tax as administered in regard to most private sector citizens. There are some people out there that says the income tax is only about corporations. That's incorrect. Income only means corporate profits. Incorrect. United States citizens and residents can only get taxable income from certain listed sources, which must be from outside the United States, which is also incorrect. This is a big one, the 861 argument. I'm not going to get into all the details of these because they're ultimately a waste of time. Filing a 1040 automatically makes one a taxpayer. Taxpayer is also a certain legal term in the code, and you are not one, okay, if you fill out a 1040. Wages are not income under the revenue laws. That's incorrect. Wages are income, and it's because wages are income and you're saying you're receiving wages that you're paying a tax on them. What you're really receiving is compensation for your private sector work that you do for your boss. Never say to the IRS, I am an employee working for an employer receiving wages, because in their mind, they understand them only as legal terms, not as the words as you and I would understand them to mean. The subject of the income tax is never identified in the law, and the income tax is connected with the Uniform Commercial Code. If you hear anything about Uniform Commercial Code, run the other way as fast as you can. These are the people that tell you need to copyright your name, you need to have all these legal protections on you, this, that, and the other thing, cost you thousands of dollars. The truth that I'm sharing with you today, you know how much I paid for it? $20. One man dedicated to the truth just wrote a book, and he wrote it that he wanted everyone to be cheaply afforded. You search on the internet and you find out other people with their tax theories. They're going to sell it to you for $200, $300, $400, $700, thousands of dollars. You'll pay thousands of dollars and you won't get anything back but lots of legal headaches. This man who I'm going to tell you about later is a true patriot. It's a true human being. Patriot really doesn't resonate with me too much. It resonates with lots of people, but human being is a guy who really just wants to share the benefits of what he's learned with others. I know, all this is a little too hard for you to believe, especially on first hearing. How could so many of you be fooled for such a long time? The answer is that you and I have been victims of some sophisticated magic. But waking up is sometimes hard to do because there are lots of false solutions out there, which we just went through. This is why clear thinking and, more importantly, personal conviction are so important in the unlearning process. After sifting through many ideas, some of which are good, others which are downright crazy, you are ultimately going to have to decide to do something or to trust something. I ultimately decided to trust Peter Hendrickson's work, and these are the results that I have received thus far. Make important note, Exhibit A, is that I am not in jail. Okay, how to get your money or power back. All this hinges on evidence. Remember, you're filling out 1040s, W-2s, all these other things. You're saying, I'm receiving everything that the law says I'm receiving. Once you understand that you're not doing that, all you need to do in this court of law, because this is where it becomes constitutional, they must have evidence to prove that you're wrong. If you say that you're not receiving these things, they have to have evidence that you fit those terms. Guess what? They don't. And they never will have that evidence, because unless you're working for the government does not have firsthand knowledge of the money that you're receiving. It's your word versus your employer's, and in that case, your word always stands, because your 1040 is an affidavit that stands in the court of law. Rebut the evidence. Use the IRS. Here's the simplest, sweetest thing about the whole thing. All of this, what I'm going to tell you, is perfectly legal as it's encoded in the IRS regulations. You use IRS Form 4852 to correct the lies about wage income your employer has been telling the IRS about you. Remember to include Social Security and Medicare in your tax refund calculations. In other words, not only when you're saying you want your money back do you include the money they're withholding regularly, but you also include the money they're taking out from Social Security and Medicare. And at the end, you'll be surprised at how big of a number that is. For prior years, if you want to, you don't have to do this. If you go the prior route, which I did, the government will give you a hard time. If you just start next year, you'll have a much easier time than what I'm telling you right now. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't go back if you feel it's the right thing to do. I encourage people to go back as well as go forward. For prior years, fill out Form 1040X, which is an amended form. In other words, you're telling the government, I'm changing my testimony about what I said about my income that year. They don't like that because it usually means them having to give you money back. You claim the money back that you overpaid in taxes for a refund. You can only go back 3 years. That's all the law allows you to do. Ideally, you would be able to get your employer to stop withholding all taxes immediately, but this is not likely to happen until more of you do the first 2 steps successfully. In other words, the more that we all practice and live this truth, the harder it is for people to continue the illusion. Educate yourself, then others. If you can't do it, then don't teach it. I'm up here because I'm doing it and I'm teaching it. My own personal results. I received a full refund from the state of New Jersey plus interest and penalties for the year 2002. I received a full refund for federal taxes in 2003. Remember, I'm telling you Social Security and Medicare too. I received a full refund of federal taxes in 2004. No state taxes were collected by me so far this year. Federal refunds for 2000 through 2002 are still pending. The IRS and myself are having a friendly go-between, and I'll keep you posted on that when it comes to its conclusion. Here's the New Jersey evidence. Basically, I changed my W-2. I tore up the W-2 that I sent in, and I filled out this Form 4852, which is the new version, and I included an attached statement that says this is why I'm changing it. In line 14, they say, explain why you changed it. I said, this change, and I only worked a partial year that year because I was starting my unlearning process, so the number is very small here. I changed from $21,994 to zero. So the government thought that I made that much money. I changed my statement to said I made zero that year on the substitute return. And this is the key, what I underline here. If the state of New Jersey compiles wage information on line 14 from W-2 information returns and personal affidavits, which is what your 1040 is, from citizen filers, you and I, then the taxes calculated on this amended return are also affected. In other words, plain English, I said, if the only way you know how much money I made is by the paperwork that I'm turning in and the evidence that I submit with that, well then I'm changing my paperwork and I'm changing the evidence and I expect my money back. If there's a different way, in other words, if there's a way that you can prove that I actually did owe this money, then I'm sorry and please throw this out. Okay, and they sent me the check back. What you see here on the left side is the check, $502, which was more than the money withheld, so it was penalties and interest. And the note on the left side said no tax liability for the year 2002. The federal evidence, like I said, it's been a harder road, but this past year, just happening, I got everything back, which is what that circled line says, $2,045.68. That number is very small because that's only, I worked it out with my employer that nothing would be withheld from me except Social Security and Medicare taxes. My employer was luckily a very kind and generous employer. So I got every single penny of that back. So the IRS for me basically right now is just a Christmas club. Okay? They collect my money and at the end of the year they give it back to me and it's nice to get a nice check like that. But every single penny I make from now on is mine. Every single penny I make from now on is mine. And some of you I know make significant dollar amounts more than I, and the tax bite is significantly more than I. The chance for your joy compared to my joy is exponentially greater. On the big line here is the IRS scare tactics that didn't work. When I tried to change it for the years 2000, 2001, 2002, the IRS said, go home. If you don't, we're going to fine you $500 for each of the years that you're talking about. I said, I'm not going home. I want to see the evidence that you have that I actually filled these things. So they fined me $1,500 in total, and they stole it from this year's return. So that's why my actual check for the federal return was only $513. That process is still in litigation, okay? But the reason why that is happening is that they're trying to say go away. Ultimately, I'll have my day in court where the IRS is going to have to once again show evidence that I received wages, worked for an employer, and I'm confident that they don't. And so this is the thing that I'm willing to do. Like I said, this will only happen if you choose to change your returns for years you've already paid. If you start forward with next year, it will be a much easier process. And if you go to a website called www.losthorizons.com, which is linked on my website, unlearning.org, which you can check when you go home, is the book called Cracking the Code, which is about 200 pages and explains this a lot more clearly and succinctly than I could do in the time right now. I take the time to do it right now because I believe it's probably the most important information that I can dedicate my life to in terms of what can really be given to people that can change their lives very quickly. This is important not because it's about money. It's important because it's an illustration that there is a system of power that benefits greatly by you believing certain illusions, okay? And when you bust through those illusions, the system is going to have to change. And so many of us, if we don't like the world, it's more than enough to just say we don't like the world. We have to be willing to change ourselves and change the system. And that leads us to the final part here. It's called manifestation. Manifestation is the other magic part, okay? It usually means it's the process of using your feelings and desires, tempered with rightness and reason, to create thoughts that ultimately express themselves as the experienced reality for the purpose of knowing yourself in increasing stages of wonder. In other words, it's using all parts of you to see what you have hidden from yourself. Manifestation is making visible that which is invisible. It's a power of creation that is maximized when you use your subconscious. Most of our submission to this system is subconsciously ingrained, okay? And so once you start tapping into that subconscious, which is always awake, your consciousness is awake maybe 16, 18 hours a day. Your subconscious is awake 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When you engage that part of you into your power of manifestation, great things happen. We see here a block of marble. This is just an illustration of manifestation and how it comes to us. You and I see a block of marble. An artist does not see a block of marble. They're in a different reality. They see a work of art. Michelangelo said, when I see a block of marble, I don't see a block of marble. I see something that needs to be freed. So he takes his chisel and he frees what he sees in the marble. Okay, and it's in there that a marble transforms itself to a sculpture, the same block of marble. Okay, that's a perfect illustration of what manifestation is. The thing is there. You just have to remove stuff to be able to see it. Okay, and so in order to do that, you're going to have to stop smoking hope. You can smoke a little more dope, but stop smoking hope. Okay? Manifestation, like any power where there's evolved, requires practice and it requires strong desire. It requires that you give up your addiction to hope. Okay? We have faith, hope, and love. These are my definitions of hope. Hope wishes well for the future, but doesn't really know, and it leads to fatigue and surrender. Politicians love to deal hope. Power structures love to deal hope. We hope that we can one day live together in peace and harmony. We hope that we can have an end to war. We hope that no one needs to suffer or ever be hungry again. We hope, we hope, we hope. And so we see the conditions of suffering, we see that things never change, and we ultimately give up. Faith is a little more powerful than hope. This is where religion starts to kick in, okay? A person intuits a positive outcome but doesn't know how it's accomplished. Faith comes through a sense of knowing someone. If you have great faith in a friend, you could say, meet me here at this time, okay? You don't need to know the proof.
You know the person's going to be there. You have this connection, and you just trust it. And because you trust that that person's going to be there, you act and you go there too. That's faith. Okay, faith is a little bit stronger, yet there's still this mystery. You don't know how things happen, you just trust that they do. It's powerful, but not the most powerful. St. Paul said, of the greatest of these is love, but St. Paul was wrong, because love doesn't give a shit either way what happens. Love, by its very nature, is all-encompassing. It embraces everything. It's embracing George Bush, child killers, child rapists, everything. That's a hard concept for us to understand. The Lord God of the universe and every single planet does not give a rat's ass if you smoke dope, if you whack off, if you do whatever, okay? The God of the universe does not really care how you decide to live your life, because that God of the universe knows you are it. You are infinite. And nothing that you can do in an illusory world is a threat to who he is or she is or shim is, okay? So the real power here is knowledge. Action leads to experience, no more faith required. Once you do something enough, you have knowledge. You don't need faith anymore. You don't need hope. You just do it. You just do it. Now, there's always moments of self-doubt where they can come in, but usually that self-doubt comes in when we face a situation that we thought we've faced before, but there's a little wrinkle there that scares us. And so we're not sure if we've been here before, and that's where we have to fall down to the other levels again. But when you're in certain levels where you've been there and you know what you're doing, no faith, no hope necessary, you just know, and you act out of that knowledge, and you are the most powerful that you can be. This is another tool. Okay, this is a tool of manifestation that I want to get to. It's called a manifesting board. It's very similar to that board I showed you with my kindergarten picture in it. These are some tools that you can take home and start using to develop your magical power. I have one of these at home. A manifesting board is simply something that reflects your desires. It's better if they're more specific than they are broad, okay? Putting your picture for world peace up there, while it's a great desire, there's 1 million or more ways to get to that. Which way do you want to get that way to? So the more specific you can be, for example, maybe I'd like a book contract one day, so that's up on my manifesting board. Maybe I'd like a new job. Okay, you're not happy in the job that you want. You want a job that really matches your desire for living. You want to wake up every day and like the work you do rather than be bored by it or just work for the paycheck, okay? Or in my case, you want a convertible Mustang, green, okay? So you put it up there, okay? And it's important that it's up there. You don't have to look at it every day, but you put the board someplace where you can see it, where it's not going to get thrown behind stuff. And it just subconsciously filters in your mind, and your desire is visualized. And that's part of the process of, and then there is this trust part here where you just say, it's going to happen. And remember, when it does happen, say thank you. Okay? Thank you, gratitude is a big, big emotional engine as part of this process. Then there's also this thing called mantras, chants, and rhymes. Pick the one that you want to do better. They help you to get beyond the conscious mind where doubt and anxiety reside. They have the secondary effect of causing deep breathing, which allows life to move through you more clearly and easily. It creates connection points for flashes of inspiration that will fuel your desires and solve your problems. And it's disturbingly simple, yet subtly powerful, because it retrains your brain. Sound, all of the universe is vibration, it's number, it's sound. When you engage your vocal cords in repetitive sounds fueled with your desires, magical things start to happen. Okay, traditional examples of this are the chant Aum that you hear in the East a lot. Aum to them is the sound of creation. Rosary, the way you usually say the rosary, you're supposed to say it a god-awful number of times. When I was a Catholic, I'm like, man, this is tiring. I can't do all 3 rounds of the rosary. That's boring. But it's purposefully boring. It's purposefully long because it's supposed to sound something like, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of death. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of death. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women. You can see it starts to sound like a chant. There's a rhyme, there's a rhythm, there's a cadence, there's a flow. It moves you into a different state of being. Okay? Nursery rhymes do the same thing. Custom example. This is a rhyme I like to tell myself in connection with what I've been teaching you tonight. By the conscious light, the IRS will admit I'm right and refund all my money plus interest to my great delight, that I might ease my fellow human's plight. That's my rhyme. Say it every day, and I know I'm going to get a check or a letter in the mail from those bastards real soon, and when I do, you know. Here's another one. It's called cut-ups. Cut-ups I learned only recently from a writer. He's known more as the writer, but he's probably a very excellent modern magician, William Burroughs. You're not happy with the way life it is? Cut it up. It's a lot easier to do with the technology we have today. As a matter of fact, the news media do that all the time. They cut up reality and put it in segments and pieces in the way that they want you to see life. Once you know that that's what they're doing, you can start doing it yourself. Take the pieces of life that you don't like, cut them out, and replace them with things that you'd like to see happen. Go to that environment if possible and insert your new reality. We're running a little short on time, otherwise I would play my own cut-up for you. But if you go to my website and you see something called Rally of the Unlearned, that's my version of a cut-up. I created a speech that I wish any politician had the balls to say. And so what I did was I created that speech and I put in sound effects of people clapping at all the great things that I was saying. Okay, now this is like an ego trip, right? Yay, I'm great. You know, I'm patting myself on the back. But the purpose of it was to take that tape, go out into the public, and play it on my radio out loud, like it's coming out of the radio. Okay, so you put it out there, and so people go, hey, what's that? What are you listening to? I'm like, I don't know. It's on some station. It sounds pretty cool. That's magic. Okay, you can do it. That's magic. What happened in the case where I learned it from was that this guy, William Burroughs, went to a coffee shop and he was very rudely treated. And so he was pissed off at that. And he said, I'm going to use my magic to shut you guys down. And so what he did was he went out in front of the coffee shop, and in the coffee shop he took a tape recorder and he collected all the sounds from the coffee shop scene. The front of the street, the outside, the inside. In other words, with the sound, he was capturing the ambiance of the environment. He went home, he took that ambient sound, and he threw in all these cut-ups of bombs going off, gunfire, crashes, all kinds of chaos and disturbing sounds, put them back into the tape, made a recording of it, and then he went back to the coffee shop and played that sound, the disturbing sounds mixed in with the coffee ambient. He did that for a couple of days. And within 2 months, the coffee shop was closed down and the place never reopened again. Did he do it? Who knows? He thinks he did it. Okay? Like I said, when you start getting results, the big question is you're going to start asking yourself, did I do it or did the universe do it? The big answer is ultimately there's no difference. Okay? There is no difference. Finally, sigils. Sigils are a fun one to make because they have a sexual component to it, possibly. Okay, basically, you write down a specific desire that you have. And what you do is, like, for example, my desire is, for a new job. Once again, be specific what the job is. Then you look at that sentence and you eliminate all the repeating letters. Cross them out, throw them out. You eliminate the vowels. What you have left is probably a few letters. Okay, and then your job is to take those letters and to arrange them in an arcane-looking symbol. This is one sigil I made. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it worked. Okay? So what you do there is, and then what you do is you try and forget what that sigil represents. You don't really have to, but once you make it, you charge it and you forget about it, okay? And there's a bunch of ways to charge the symbol. Some people charge it through sexual orgasm. So in other words, they have the sigil right there at the moment they climax, and they focus on the sigil while they're climaxing. And it puts all that creative, divine energy, sexual energy, into what you're doing. Some people draw the sigil on their lover while they're having sex. And when they orgasm, they see it. Okay? There's also spinning. You ever see the Sufis from Western? They're a radical branch of spiritual Muslims. They do lots of spinning. Spinning is a way that focuses your mind very, very like a tunnel effect. And that's the kind of effect you need if you're going to charge your sigils. Or deep meditation. You know, if you can get into deep, deep states of meditation where you can focus clearly on one thing for a little bit of time, try sigils. Okay? But for most people don't want to take the hour. They like to think, hey, now I can have another reason to masturbate. And so they go ahead and do it. All right? Why this matters. It's important to understand that all of your magical tools that I've just shown you and more are currently being used against you, so that a few in this world might live in a lap of luxury while the rest of us live in a mostly state of confusion and suffering. Where the wizards, warlocks, and magicians once remained hidden from views in castle towers, mountain caves, or temple tombs, they now reside amongst us in business suits, stalking government buildings and corporate offices. They work in great numbers and with great sophistication to keep the herd of humanity spellbound when one direction, while the real action is taking place in another. This is a very simple graph, but I think it outlines the true condition of why the world is the way it is today. All of you and I, and all the nations in the world, are fighting over that purple piece of the pie, because that's the only thing that we've been told exists. Once you realize that that green pie, 90% more abundance than you and I can imagine, exists, this illusion is over and we begin to chart a way out of this mess. Washington, D.C., is it a normal city? Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Remember that little owl I showed you on the dollar bill? What's that owl doing sitting on top of the pyramid surrounding the Capitol building? East of the Capitol building, is Washington, D.C. a normal city? Oh, there's the Star of David, a finely purposeful, intentional sigil magic. Washington, D.C. is an occult capital. Washington, D.C. is filled with occult designs. If you look at the White House, there's an upside-down pentagram that is oftentimes associated with satanic energies. Now, I don't want to say that what's going on here is entirely satanic by meaning that there is a devil. By satanic, we mean that in us which chooses to believe in the physical reality more than our spiritual reality. And when you make the decision to believe in the physical reality more than the spiritual reality, your values change. And it's a lot easier to do the things that we look at in horror on television. And Washington, D.C. is a city dedicated to that. Washington, D.C. is not only built according to this design. Washington, D.C. was designed by Freemasons, but so was London, Paris, and the Vatican. Oftentimes the Vatican, the Catholic Church, tells you stay away from astrology, stay away from the tarot, stay away from the spiritual masters and Ouija boards. Yet the Catholic Church is an occult organization just like all the other non-religious, non-spiritual organizations. They are all occult. On the back of the dollar bill is the Great Seal of the United States, once again with the pyramid. What the hell does the United States have to do with the pyramid? Okay, and if you look at that, once again, the Star of David, which is on the back of the Great Seal, it spells out Mason. Okay, once again, the odds of these things happening are beyond chance in this universe. What the elite have always desired, why are they crafting this magic? Well, in the physical world, a world totally driven by your senses and enslaved to your senses, it's a world where you exist as farm animals. You exist to feed them with a condition of life beyond your imagination. In order to do that, you will be titillated with highly sexual situations and controlled by highly fearful scenarios. And the police state is one of those examples in which it's more easy to accomplish those goals. It is scary to me to think that that man on the right is a police officer and he thinks that he's doing the world good because he needs to have a gun to police his citizens. Not just a normal gun. This is a gun meant to kill mass numbers of people. Terrorists are not armies. They don't attack like armies. Why are we giving them army weapons? Why are we giving our police army weapons? These are good questions that I think we need to ask and ask soon. But on another level, what is it that these elites desire? These are statues from a bridge in Norway. On another level of reality, there exists a spirit, our spirit, if you will, maybe not, maybe so, but it's the vampire spirit. It's a reptilian spirit. It feeds off of humans. Humans have a wonderful range of emotions. If you've seen The Matrix, that's a true scenario. We are batteries of energy that people feed off of. You see the woman totally captured and imprisoned and being feasted off of. You see the man hand-bound and tied, and the lizard happily having him that way. That's what's going on here in the spiritual dimension, if that's what happens when you subscribe to the illusions. By now, maybe you're beginning to understand. Your appearance here this evening, no matter what your conscious reasoning may tell you, signals that you are ready to make another great leap in power and understanding that will greatly affect the course of your lives. You can ultimately decide to run away from this opportunity that I showed you tonight, but it will surely return to you. At some point, you will have to face it. We live in a world where what is on the surface can no longer be trusted. The single-dimensional perspective must be jettisoned if you are to participate in the awakening multiverse that has been brewing on this planet for ages. You must learn to see in and through things in order to detect what is truly present. What they fear most is your knowledge of the game, your knowledge of the game's mechanisms, your knowledge of power, your knowledge of power spreading, and your knowledge of your true nature. Don't let your heart be troubled. Remember what was revealed to you before. Knowledge of the game and its mechanisms, not to mention knowledge of your own power, is the thing that brings it all down. When I took the leap of faith into my own unlearning process now over 3 years ago, I had no idea how things were going to turn out well for me, but I only knew that it would. After there was a part of me that did not really care, there was a part of me that really did not care if it didn't, because who really wants to live in a world run by such dark and sadistic motherfuckers? But lucky for me, I have always recognized the light in me, even when I was caught up in the world's great illusions, and happily so. And this is the point that I would leave you with tonight. Trust that light. It's the light of consciousness that can never go out, for it is present in all things, even in our darkest foes. Just as the switch to the greater level of light was very dramatic on that November evening and instantaneous for me, so I believe it can happen for anyone, which is why I took the chance to start the IOU, do what I'm doing, and be here tonight. The light knows what your deepest desire is, and all your experiences are leading to that. Trust that light. Ultimately, Earth and physicality can only yield so many internal states of awareness. Until we realize this, we will chase our desires all over creation, throwing our light this way and that, just to see what happens. That you and I may have a preference for a kinder and more gentler physical experience has nothing to do with what the universe prefers. To it, everything has been and always will be in balance. So there's a part of this, chill out. Do not forsake your own truth, however, because this is the reality. Simply return to it from time to time when the illusion of this world gets overbearing. Once your desire for self-knowledge exceeds your desire for physical experience, the light in you will begin to grow. The light shines in any condition of existence. Trust that light wherever you are. Finally, I would like to cast a spell, but I need your help to cast that spell. I briefly described the magical tool of cut-ups before, and like I said, while I won't play that cut-up because it's 11 minutes long and we're a little over, okay? What I would like to do is encourage you to participate in this cut up with me. My cut up was basically the speech of everything that I wanted to hear. But ultimately that speech was just meant to inspire you on the way out. I talked about how this universe was a magical universe, and everything that led up to tonight truly, truly reinforced that. Before I was agreed to speak here, I was first going to make my debut performance in Bucks County, Pennsylvania this Wednesday to the New Hope Metaphysical Society. And they ultimately canceled and shifted me over to September. So I'll be doing my magic there in 2 months. But I felt very strongly that I needed to speak this week because it's the first week of the Mayan New Year and all the other stuff. And I knew that I needed to speak this week, and I knew that I would speak. Well, a day or two after that cancellation, Pete Siliberto gave me a call, and he started to put anarchist ideas in my head. And he said, let's go ahead and do this thing. And I said yes. So because I knew I was waiting for the opportunity, whoever brought it, Pete brought it. And so I said yes to it. And so here we are, setting it up, and I'm coming here, and I realized that the place is called the 8 Park Underground. When I first heard it, I was like, I didn't really think too much of the name. But then I saw that the 8 Park Underground used the London Underground symbol as its symbol. And I thought, this is too fucking crazy, but that's life. It is too fucking crazy. This is Magick, okay? And you can help me participate in this last spell tonight. Most people know today the underground is a place of fear because of the bombs that were set off. And now we're doing more random police searches in our own New York City subways and other places around the nation, another opportunity for the police state to become more normal to you, okay? But because you're here tonight in the 8 Park Underground, and you've heard the information that you've heard tonight, when you walk out here back to the surface reality, if you walk back with a little bit of laughter, joy, power, love, life force beating in your heart in the shadow of what happened on September 11th, if you can walk around this area with that kind of power in your chest, with the dedication to dedicate your understanding to knowing more of this and developing your own magical potential, the spell has a fractal effect that will negate what happened in the London Underground. Okay, like I said, we are immensely powerful beings. What happens to one of us happens to all of us at some level, even if it's not the level that we understand right now. And if you can walk out of here with a good frame of mind and not be intimidated by the information that you've heard, but be empowered by the information that you've heard, the spell works. Okay, and so, like I said in the beginning, I thanked you very much for your rapt attention. You've been a wonderful, amazing audience. Thank you for laughing very much at all my silly jokes and laughing at me. That's fine too. And it's very glad to see a lot of you. It's a great evening. It's better than anything I could ever have hoped that it would have turned out. It's a wonderful way to come back to New Jersey and have the Roselle Catholic connection here for the few people that are here to support me with that. And it's wonderful to see my family and my friends. And there's no better place in which I would choose to launch my career, this different phase in my life, is telling this story and telling this truth. And I thank you all for being here. Thank you very much. I would like to say, Pete probably doesn't want you to let you know this, but in a couple hours it's going to be his birthday. So I thought this was a wonderful birthday present to Pete. Happy birthday, Pete.
Thank you.
Pete, do we have time to? Okay, we've got. I really do apologize. I don't have a clock. Okay, I really do apologize. It's a lot longer than what I thought it was. If there's a question that somebody has that is absolutely burning, that you think that the whole group would really benefit with a group answer to, I'd be happy to answer that question. Otherwise, let's just hang out a little bit afterwards and we can do stuff on a one-on-one. Or once again, my website is www.unlearning.org. My email address is pmooney@unlearning.org. I'm more than happy to correspond with you guys in that way. And like I said, I want to know that the information that I've given you tonight, it's a Mooney back guarantee, which means I personally stand by everything that I said. I'm willing to dialogue with you and back it up until you can understand my point of view and my experience about it. Okay, anybody have that question?
Well, it's hard to ask a question when you set it up like that. Go ahead. Who got the question?
Does anybody have it? Okay, shoot.
What happened that November day?
That November day, I was asking all these questions, and I was, at the night before or 2 nights before, I had read some of this disturbing information about Jesus, how he was not real and all this other stuff, and there were lots of messiahs, and I just was still hanging on to the last thread of my Christianity, and I said, God, Jesus, whatever you are, man to man, Son of God to Son of God, God to God, whatever to whatever, I just want to know who the fuck you are. Just like that. I said, I want to know who the fuck you are. I can take it. Give it to me. And then that night, that eve, I came to that total crashing realization that the story of Jesus, which I had believed and used as a teaching tool all through my Catholic days at Roselle Catholic, was a tremendous myth, wrong on so many accounts, and to present it as truth was a lie that I could no longer participate in. And at the same time, I realized about that pyramid with the bastards at the top, orchestrating 9/11 and all that stuff. And I was a history teacher, and I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't work in a Catholic school who's dedicated to the truth, supposedly, dedicated to a true person, dedicated to a true country, dedicated to a true way of living that was all fake. I mean, and viciously fake from my point of view. It might not be from your point of view, but from my point of view, the scar, the burning, the hurt of the lie. It's like, it's the worst from a life point of view. It's like probably, breaking up with the person that you loved most, realizing that the person you loved most was being so false to you. That's exactly what it was. The thing that I would love, that my whole life, some of you know, I was going to be a priest or a brother. That was a part of my life that was, at least one point, was very, very focused to me. I wanted to dedicate my life to this gospel, and to realize that it was false, it almost destroyed me. It does destroy some people. The mystics will tell you the line between being a mystic and being a complete raving fucking lunatic is a hair's length wide. And so maybe to some of you, I'm that complete raving fucking lunatic, okay? And to some of you, maybe I'm that mystic. Some of you are still going to piece it together and you don't know yet. Okay? But you still love me, and I appreciate that. But like I said, ultimately, I did what I did, not because I'm looking to get anybody down or destroy anything. I did it because I love myself, and I looked at my life and I said, I want to live my life to the best quality that I can live it. And if I believe that what I'm doing is a lie, I can't, out of love for myself, I can't do it anymore. So that was the great evening. And, some of you guys were witness to me trying to hold it all together, in that final year. I think I did an okay job. You don't look too psychologically scarred. And it was just one of those things where that was the change. And that change may be a different thing to some of you. But the only thing that I would say where that question could lead is, when that event happens to you, if it hasn't happened already, don't be afraid to follow it. Don't be afraid to jump into that dark night of the soul. Don't be afraid to jump into that abyss, okay? You will come out on the other side. You're infinite. You can't not come out in another place where you need to be. So just trust that process, throw yourself into it, and try and have fun doing it too. Ultimately, the greatest teachers will make us laugh at ourselves. I love to read Anthony DeMello to you guys, because Anthony DeMello was the Jesuit priest who knew his religion was a crock of crap, and he used to say, I'm an ass and you're an ass. And we're all just asses, like kicking ourselves, like donkeys do when you get too close to them. And I used to imitate the donkey thing to you, and I like to make you guys laugh, all right? But we got to laugh at ourselves. If we don't laugh at ourselves, we lose what's best about ourselves, because it's an illusion. You don't get too wrapped up in it. But in my illusion, I'd like to see an illusion where we're nice to each other, where we don't have to kill, where we don't have to have war, where we can share all the wealth that we have, where we surf the stars, because we have the technology and means that no person needs to suffer or go hungry right now. It's not years away, it's right now. The only thing that's stopping us right now is our commitment to make that happen. It's our desire to make that happen. Instead, our desire is focused into something else. So when that desire switch comes to you, and like I said, there's no right or wrong when it happens. If it happens to you when you're 50, or not this life, but 200 lives from now, whenever it happens, welcome it, embrace it, take it, ride it. You can't lose. Anybody else? I'd say that's it. We've got to kind of end on that. Pete's going to rush us out the door.